If you ever lost power for one night and realized half your smart home becomes useless, you're not alone. And Tibetan monasteries quietly solved that problem a long time ago. In this video, we'll move fast through 12 forgotten monk tricks that replace modern gadgets without electricity. And I'll keep it practical, not romantic. You'll learn how they heat a room without central heating, keep hot water ready without a kettle, cook without multiple appliances, preserve food without a fridge, dry clothes without a dryer, light spaces without bulbs, and organize the day without apps. Along the way, I'll flag what is genuinely transferable to a modern home and what belongs to high-altitude tradition, because some old methods involve smoke and fire that you should treat with respect. Monasteries don't win by having more tools. They win by having fewer tools that do more. And once you see the pattern, you'll start noticing how many gadgets you can replace with a routine, a material choice, or a smarter sequence. Monasteries stay warm in freezing places not because they've discovered magic insulation, but because they don't waste heat trying to warm empty space, and they don't rely on short, aggressive bursts of heat the way modern homes often do. They build a warm core, they feed it steadily, and they let the building do the storage. The first monk trick is what I call the one-room rule. You deliberately choose one main room to be the living warmth zone, and you treat every other room as a buffer, not a destination. That single decision replaces a whole category of modern gadgets. Space heaters, heated blankets, fan heaters running in multiple rooms. Because comfort isn't just air temperature, it's where your body spends its time. In cold regions, Tibetan homes and monastery living quarters traditionally use stoves built from mud and stone, often kept burning for long stretches, sometimes fueled by what the environment actually offers when trees are scarce. The point isn't the fuel itself. The point is the design logic. A heavy stove radiates steady heat and turns fuel into stored warmth, instead of a quick blast that disappears as soon as the flame dies. If you've ever stood near a thick masonry fireplace and felt warm even when the room air still felt cool, you felt the difference between radiant heat and just warm air. Monasteries lean into radiant heat because it's stable, quiet, and it doesn't depend on fans or constant adjustments. They also tend to keep the heat source close to where people sit and work, so the heat is used immediately instead of being spread thin across a whole building. The second monk trick is hot water as a constant resource, not a separate task. In a modern home, we boil water on demand with electric kettles, coffee machines, or instant hot taps. In a monastery-style system, hot water is always in the background, like a quiet companion. Traditionally, a kettle or pot lives near the heat source, and as the room stays warm, water stays ready. Even when the water is not boiling, it's warm enough to be useful, and that replaces several modern conveniences at once. Quick warming drinks, washing, simple food prep, and calming the body without needing a shower every time. And this matters because feeling cold is often a body sensation problem, not a thermostat problem. Warm hands, warm feet, and a warm drink can change perceived comfort faster than pushing the room from 19 degrees Celsius to 22 degrees Celsius, and they cost far less in energy. The modern translation is simple. If you have any safe heat source, stove, fireplace, even a single efficient heater, you can create your own hot water background by keeping a covered pot at a safe distance or by using a well-insulated thermos that you refill once and then treat like your monk kettle for the next hours. It's not about being old-fashioned. It's about removing decision fatigue. When hot water is always there, you stop doing 5 little heat tasks throughout the day and you stop needing gadgets designed to solve those tasks one by one. There's also a comfort trick monasteries use that feels almost too simple. They warm objects, not air. A warm stone, a warmed cloth, a warm bench near the stove. Those are thermal batteries. In some traditional cold weather settings, heated stones or bricks are used as short-term heat stores that you place near the body to make the core feel safe. I'm not telling you to improvise with random rocks in your oven. I'm telling you the principle. Warmth is portable if you store it in mass. In a modern home, that might look like a hot water bottle, a microwavable heat pack, or a properly designed thermal mass object. Safe tools that replicate the warm object advantage without open flame risks. And because we're adults, we add the safety layer the monastery doesn't need to explain out loud. Traditional fuel practices like burning dung can produce serious indoor air pollution if ventilation is poor. and measurements in Tibetan households have shown high levels of fine particulate pollution when such fuels are used indoors, which is why you should never treat smoke exposure as a wellness practice. The monk lesson isn't burn what they burn, it's build steady heat and use it efficiently. So here's the takeaway you can actually apply tonight. Pick a core room, reduce drafts in that room, keep warmth steady instead of spiky, and make hot water a background resource instead of a repeated task. Once you do that, you'll notice something surprising. You'll feel calmer because your nervous system stops living in tiny emergencies like cold hands, cold feet, and constant reheating. And that sets up the next problem perfectly, because once you've built the warm core, you realize modern kitchens use electricity less for cooking itself and more for convenience and speed. In the next section, I'll show you 2 monk-style cooking tricks that replace multiple appliances at once. One is about using residual heat, so you don't need constant power, and the other is about layering a single heat source, so it acts like 3 gadgets in one. Modern kitchens use electricity less for cooking and more for avoiding small inconveniences. Reheating, stirring, timing, and keeping food warm while you do something else. Monastic kitchens solve those same problems with sequence instead of appliances. And the first trick is the one that quietly replaces a slow cooker, a rice cooker, and half your keep warm functions in one move: retained heat cooking. You bring a pot to a real boil for a short window, then you remove it from the heat and trap the heat you already paid for, letting the food finish cooking inside insulation like a hay box or thermal cooker. This isn't a modern hack. Versions of fireless cooking and retained heat cookers have a documented history, and the method is exactly what it sounds like. The food continues cooking because the pot stays hot when it's insulated properly. The monastery logic behind it is brutal and simple. Fuel is precious, attention is precious, and you don't sit there feeding a flame just to keep water simmering. You do the energetic part once, then you let physics do the rest. The practical version for a modern home is easy and safe if you respect one rule. You must start with a proper boil long enough for the food mass to be uniformly hot, then insulate immediately so temperature doesn't crash. People fail when they try to almost heat and then wonder why it stalls. The easiest meals for this are soups, stews, oats, rice, beans that have been soaked, and anything that normally does fine with gentle simmering. Boil hard for a few minutes, then wrap the pot in thick towels and place it in a snug container, or use a purpose-built thermal cooker if you have one. The reason it feels like a gadget replacement is psychological as much as practical. It gives you time back. You're not stuck monitoring. You're not tempted to keep fiddling. You don't need a second device to keep it warm because the whole system is the keep warm device. And there's a stealth benefit that monasteries love because it matches their day. The food becomes predictable. When your cooking method is stable, your schedule becomes stable. That's why it fits a monastic routine so well. You can study, work, chant, or do chores while the pot finishes itself. Now, the second monk trick replaces an even bigger pile of gadgets because it attacks the real problem in most kitchens. We cook as if every task needs its own heat source. Monasteries cook as if one heat source can do several jobs at once by stacking temperature zones. They use a single stove or flame like a multi-station system. Hottest at the center, gentler at the edges, and off-heat, zones that still cook through residual warmth. You can recreate that without any special equipment by thinking in layers. The pot that needs the most heat goes closest to the flame. The pot that needs gentle heat sits slightly off to the side or on a raised ring. The pot that just needs warmth sits on the far edge or on a warm stone or metal surface nearby. This is how you replace the microwave reheat habit. Instead of blasting food after it's cold, you prevent it from getting cold by giving it a low, steady warmth zone. It's also how you replace the second burner problem when you only want to use one heat source. And you'll notice something almost immediately. When you cook like this, the kitchen becomes quieter. Less urgency, less stopping and starting, fewer quick fixes. Even the act of making tea becomes part of the system. Traditional Tibetan kitchens, including monastic kitchens, revolve around large pots for tea and soup and a rhythm of serving rather than constant separate cooking events. That rhythm is the gadget replacement, because what a lot of gadgets really do is rescue us from chaotic timing. Monasteries avoid chaotic timing in the first place. If you want an example you can picture, imagine a simple day where one pot is always in play. The base broth or soup is made early. It becomes the platform for the rest of the day. Add noodles, add vegetables, add protein, add barley, adjust salt, and you have new meals without new devices. You're not constantly starting from zero. You're updating a living pot. That's why they can feed many people with limited equipment. Now, because this is an electricity video, there's a temptation to romanticize old tools and pretend everything is better. It's not. A gas flame or any combustion cooking can raise indoor pollution if you cook in a sealed space. And that matters for the exact audience we're speaking to, people who care about breath, heart, and long-term comfort. The WHO is very clear that household combustion smoke and fine particulate pollution are health risks. And the solution is ventilation and cleaner methods where possible. So the Monk-compatible upgrade for a modern home is not more smoke. It's better sequence plus smarter clearing. Cook efficiently, then clear the air. That's not untraditional. It's disciplined. And when you do need speed without electricity, Monasteries use the simplest speed trick of all: pre-soften and pre-soak. Beans soaked overnight cook faster. Grains rinsed and soaked behave better. Hard ingredients cut smaller cook faster. The gadget here is preparation. It's boring, but it's why you don't need an instant pot to feel in control. Pressure cooking is another speed method many households use. And while it's a device, it's not electric by necessity. And it's worth mentioning because credible sources consistently show it reduces cooking time compared to open pot cooking for many foods. But you don't even need that for the Monk lesson to work. The Monk lesson is reduce active flame time, reduce attention time, and increase predictability. Retained heat does that. Layered cooking does that. And once you adopt those two, a funny thing happens. The kitchen stops feeling like a place where you chase convenience gadgets and starts feeling like a calm production line you control. Which is perfect because the moment you can heat and cook efficiently, you realize the next gadget trap modern life relies on is refrigeration. We treat the fridge like a requirement for adulthood, but Monasteries built survival strategies around dryness, salt, fermentation, and storage discipline. In the next section, I'll give you 2 Monk methods for preserving food without a fridge that don't rely on myth. One is a dry first pantry rule that prevents spoilage before it starts. And the other is a way of stabilizing food using roasting and fat, so it stays usable when modern breakfast would already be stale. Modern refrigeration didn't make food safe. It made us careless about moisture, timing, and storage sequence. Monasteries never had the luxury of throwing everything into cold storage, so they built systems that prevented spoilage before it began, and the first of those systems replaces a surprising number of modern gadgets at once: the dry first pantry rule. The idea is simple and ruthless. Anything that enters storage must be as dry as it reasonably can be, and anything that can trap moisture is treated as a risk, not a convenience. In practice, that means grains are aired before storage, cooked foods are cooled uncovered so steam can escape, and containers are chosen to breathe when needed rather than seal moisture inside. You can see this logic across cold and arid cultures because moisture is the real enemy of shelf life. Mold, rancidity, and bacterial growth all accelerate when water is trapped. Monasteries counter this by prioritizing airflow, elevation, and separation. Food is stored off the ground, away from walls, and never in dense piles that trap humidity. Even in stone buildings, which can be cool and damp, food is kept in the driest zones, often near gentle warmth that encourages evaporation rather than condensation. This one rule quietly replaces dehumidifiers, fridge cramming, and the constant anxiety of, is this still good? Because the environment itself is doing the preserving. The second Monk trick in this category replaces the freezer and the meal prep gadget culture at the same time: stabilization by heat and fat. Instead of trying to keep food cold forever, Monasteries convert it into forms that resist spoilage. Roasting grains until they're fully dry, then storing them sealed, dramatically extends shelf life and prevents insect infestation. Barley prepared as roasted flour is a classic example. Once it's fully toasted, its moisture content is low enough that it becomes stable for long periods if kept dry. That's not nostalgia, that's chemistry. Lower water activity means microbes struggle to grow. The same principle applies to meats and vegetables. Partial cooking followed by drying, or cooking followed by submersion in fat. Fat is not just calories, it's a barrier. When food is coated in fat and kept cool and dry, oxygen and moisture have a harder time reaching it, slowing spoilage. This is why confit-like methods existed long before refrigeration. The monastery logic is again about sequence. Remove water first, then stabilize. Modern homes often invert this by cooking food, sealing it while still moist, and trusting the fridge to rescue it. That works until it doesn't. And when it fails suddenly. The monk's system fails slowly, with visible cues: dryness, smell, texture. That's not an accident. It's a safety feature. There's also a behavioral component that replaces reminder apps and "eat this before" labels. Monasteries cycle food deliberately. New food is placed behind older food. The simplest items are eaten first. Complex preparations are reserved for times when people are present to eat them fully. Nothing sits forgotten in the back. That discipline alone replaces the modern gadget of more storage space, which only hides inefficiency. You don't need a bigger fridge if your pantry is designed to move. And because we're adults, we add the safety reality. Not every traditional method translates directly. Some fermented foods require specific salt concentrations and cleanliness to be safe, and some drying methods depend on climate. The lesson isn't to improvise blindly. It's to adopt the principles: dryness, airflow, fat barriers, and rotation, using methods appropriate to your environment. Even simple steps like cooling food uncovered, storing grains in breathable containers in a dry cabinet, and roasting before storage can noticeably extend shelf life without adding a single device. And once you stop relying on refrigeration as a crutch, you notice another quiet benefit. Food tastes better when it isn't constantly chilled and reheated. Texture holds. Aromas stay present. Meals feel intentional instead of rescued. That shift sets up the next category perfectly, because the moment you stop dumping heat and moisture into your kitchen and pantry, you realize the next modern gadget that tries to fix a problem we created is the dryer and the dehumidifier. Monasteries didn't fight dampness with machines. They choreographed air and warmth so moisture never got comfortable. In the next section, I'll show you 2 monk tricks that dry clothes and prevent damp without electricity. One uses microcurrents you can create in any home, and the other uses store heat to pull moisture out without blasting the room. If there's one modern gadget people panic about during a power outage, it's the dryer, because we've trained ourselves to see drying as a machine function instead of a room function. Monasteries solved drying long before electricity by treating moisture like an enemy that must be moved, not merely waited out. And the first trick that replaces a dryer is what I call microcurrent drying. It's not hang clothes and hope. It's creating small, deliberate air movement paths that keep moisture leaving fabric instead of lingering and turning into that sour, damp smell. The misconception is that you need a powerful fan. You don't. You need a path for air to enter, pass across the wet surface, and exit. In a monastery, buildings are often drafty by modern standards, and monks use that to their advantage. They hang textiles where natural convection and small drafts already exist. Near doorways, along corridors, near high points where warm air rises, and near low points where cooler air can enter. The modern translation is to stop drying clothes in the deadest part of your home. If you hang wet fabric in a still corner, you create a moisture pocket. That pocket raises local humidity, which slows evaporation, which makes the fabric stay damp longer, which increases microbial growth, which creates odor. The monk approach is to break the pocket. Pick a location with natural movement, even subtle movement, and then engineer it. Crack a window slightly and crack a door on the opposite side, so there's a gentle flow, not a windstorm. Place the clothes so air can touch both sides. Avoid stacking in tight folds. The most overlooked trick is spacing. If garments touch each other, moisture transfers and the interior surfaces never dry. Monks learn this by necessity because they often dry heavy robes and fabrics. If you bunch them, they stay damp all day. Spacing turns one drying rail into 3 times the capacity. Another microcurrent tactic is height stratification. Warm air rises and can carry moisture away faster. Hanging lighter items higher can speed drying, while heavier items stay closer to gentle warmth. Even without heat, air movement is the primary driver. And because we're being practical, we add the smell discipline. If an item is drying and you smell sourness, it's not still wet, it's already turning. The monk move is immediate action. Re-rinse or wash, wring harder, and restart with better airflow. Waiting is how you get mildew. The second monk trick replaces not just the dryer, but also the impulse to turn your home into a sauna to fight damp. It's the stored heat drying method, where you use thermal mass as a quiet moisture puller. Monasteries often heat one core room and allow surrounding zones to remain cooler. That means warmth is concentrated and stable. In that warm zone, even a small amount of radiant heat can accelerate evaporation dramatically if it's aimed correctly. They take advantage of warm surfaces, stone, brick, ceramic, because these hold heat and release it slowly. The modern version is not put wet clothes on a radiator, which can create mold behind furniture and damage walls. The modern monk-safe version is to place a heat-storing object near the drying zone to raise local temperature gently without overheating the whole house. That can be a hot water bottle placed near the drying rack, a covered pot of warm water in the room, or any safe source of gentle warmth that increases the temperature gradient between fabric and air. The goal is to keep the air in the drying zone slightly warmer and slightly moving, so moisture keeps leaving. And here's the key insight that makes it work without creating a damp home. The moment moisture leaves fabric, it becomes humidity in your room. If you don't give that humidity an exit, you've simply moved the problem from cloth to walls. That's why monasteries pair drying with brief ventilation pulses. You don't need windows wide open for hours. You need short, strategic flushes that remove humidity without dumping all your heat. It's the same pattern we used in the smoke routine. A controlled disturbance and a controlled exit. Drying becomes a cycle. Warm and move air to pull moisture out, then vent briefly to remove the moisture you just extracted. If you do that, your room doesn't become clammy and your clothes don't become musty. This is also where the modern home needs an adult warning. Drying large amounts of laundry indoors without proper ventilation can increase indoor humidity and raise the risk of condensation and mold, particularly in already damp climates or poorly ventilated rooms. Monasteries often have different building dynamics and airflow. You need to respect yours. So the monk-safe rule is quantity control. Don't dry an entire week of laundry in one small sealed room. Dry in smaller batches with airflow. Now, this section ties the whole video together because you can see the pattern. Monks replace gadgets by replacing devices with systems. Heat is a system. Cooking is a system. Preservation is a system. Drying is a system. And once you understand that, you can apply it to almost any modern dependence without becoming a survivalist. If you want, the next episode can go deeper into lighting and time organization, because monasteries also solve those without electricity in a way that feels surprisingly modern. Steady light using simple fuels and reflection, and daily structure using cues instead of notifications. Those two tricks are where people feel the most psychological relief, because it's not just about doing chores without gadgets. It's about feeling calm and capable when the modern world goes dark. Section 5. Light without bulbs. Steady flame, safe placement, and reflection multipliers. When people imagine no electricity, they picture darkness as the main problem. But monasteries treat darkness like a design constraint, not an emergency, and that mindset replaces a whole drawer of modern gadgets in one move. The first monk trick here is simple. Don't chase brightness, chase steadiness. A modern house is built around sudden, overhead light that floods the room, so when that disappears, the space feels unusable. Monasteries don't do that. They build around small, stable points of light that make one area functional and calm. And that's why traditional butter lamps and oil lamps make so much sense in their world. Not because they're romantic, but because they're predictable, quiet, and local. Instead of lighting the whole space, you light the table, the corner where you read, the area where you eat, the place where you prepare. That one island of light. Philosophy means you immediately stop wasting fuel and you stop needing portable lanterns everywhere. The modern version isn't turn your house into a candle museum. It's to create one safe light station with rules. The rule set is what turns an old method into a monk method. Flame must be stable. The base must be heavy. It must be away from textiles. There must be nothing above it. And it must never be left alone. That's non-negotiable. Monasteries can do flame safely because their environment and habits are structured around it. You can do it safely if you copy the structure, not just the object. The second trick is the one that makes a tiny flame feel like a usable room. reflection multiplication. Monks didn't need a bright bulb because they positioned light so it bounced off pale walls, metal bowls, and simple reflective surfaces. You can multiply usable light immediately by placing your flame near a pale wall rather than in the middle of the room, or by placing a clean metal tray behind it as a reflector so the light is pushed forward instead of lost behind. This is the same principle as a photographer's bounce card, but it's ancient. You're redirecting scarce light into the zone you actually use. Even a simple white cloth pinned safely as a light background can make a small lamp feel twice as bright, as long as it's far enough from heat and never touching flame. And once you adopt this, you notice the real gadget replacement. You don't need 3 flashlights and 2 headlamps if you have one stable light island that feels calm and functional. Another monk trick is to lower your visual demand, not your life quality. Monasteries don't expect to do precision tasks at midnight. They structure the day so high-precision work happens in daylight and low-precision tasks happen in low light. That replaces modern night productivity gadgets with scheduling. It's the same pattern again. When the system is smarter, the device becomes less necessary. If you want to make it practical, here's how you'd implement this in a modern home in 10 minutes without buying anything. Pick one table as your light island. Clear it completely. Place one stable flame source in the center on a non-flammable base. Place a metal tray or pale backing behind it to push light forward, and create a no cloth, no paper, no curtain zone around it. Then set one rule. If you leave the room, the flame goes out. Adults don't lose houses because they used candles. They lose houses because they treated flame like background decor. Monks treat flame like a responsibility. That difference is the entire trick. And there's one more subtle benefit that older audiences will feel immediately. Steady low light reduces nervous system noise at night. Bright overhead light keeps the brain in day mode. A small warm flame cues the body toward evening. That doesn't just replace a bulb, it replaces the feeling that you need screens to unwind. But once you solve light, you hit the biggest modern dependence of all, organization. Most people don't realize how much of their day is held together by notifications, timers, and smart reminders. Monasteries replace that with rhythm and cues, and it's the most transferable category in the entire video because it doesn't require fire, fuel, or special tools. In the next section, I'll give you 2 monk systems that replace apps and gadgets for daily structure. One uses simple sound and physical cues to lock your habits in place, and the other uses a single bowl cleanup method that keeps your space orderly even when life gets hectic. The biggest shock during a power outage isn't losing entertainment, it's losing structure. People don't realize how much their day is quietly held together by tiny electrical crutches, timers, reminders, calendar pings, smart speakers, digital notes, even the constant background clock on every screen. Monasteries replaced all of that with something stronger than technology, cue-based rhythm. And this is where the forgotten monk tricks stop being survival hacks and start being lifestyle upgrades, because a good cue system doesn't just work without electricity. It works better than apps when your mind is stressed. The first monk trick is what I'll call the bell logic, even if you don't own a bell. In monastery life, time is not managed by checking. It's managed by signals. A sound happens, a phase begins. Another sound happens, a phase ends. The mind doesn't negotiate. That reduces decision fatigue, which is the real enemy of consistency. You can build the same system at home with any non-electric cue, a mechanical kitchen timer, a small handbell, a simple chime, even a routine that uses a physical action as the start gun. The key is not the object, it's the rule. One cue equals one block of life. For example, you decide that the first cue of the day begins the warm core phase. Water on, room warmed, body awakened. The second cue begins the work and focus phase. Phone away, one task only. The third cue begins the maintenance phase. Cook, clean, prepare. The fourth cue begins the downshift phase. Low light, quiet, reset. The reason this replaces apps is that it stops you from constantly redeciding. Adults over 50 tend to love this once they try it, because it feels like the day is carrying you instead of you dragging the day behind you. And it matches the monastery idea that discipline is not aggression, it's simplification. If you want a monk-level upgrade, you tie the cue to a sensory anchor. That means you pair each block with one consistent physical signal. A warm drink for the first block, a specific seat for the work block, a specific cloth or apron for the maintenance block, a specific lamp for the downshift block. The brain learns faster when cues are physical and repetitive. You start moving into the habit before you even feel motivated. That's the entire monastery advantage in modern terms. They don't wait for the right mood to appear. They use cues to create the mood. Now, the second monk trick is the one that replaces a whole category of modern organization gadgets. Drawers of organizers, racks, systems, even the need for constant deep cleaning. It's the one-bowl system, and it's deceptively powerful because it compresses mess into a single controllable container. In monastic living, especially in simple quarters, the environment is kept functional by reducing drift. Drift is when small items migrate across surfaces and become clutter. Modern homes are full of drift because we have many objects and no ritual for returning them. The one-bowl system is the ritual. You place one bowl, tray, or container in the core room, the same room we warmed in section 1. And any small object that doesn't belong on a surface goes into that bowl immediately. Not later. Immediately. Keys, papers, tools, loose packaging, anything. That single rule prevents clutter from spreading, and it replaces the gadget impulse of buying more storage to hide mess. Then once per day at the same cue time, you empty the bowl as a 5-minute ritual. The bowl becomes your daily reset point. Monasteries do this conceptually with fewer belongings and stronger habits. But the principle scales beautifully to modern life because it's realistic. You don't need perfect tidiness. You need one place where disorder is allowed to exist temporarily. That reduces stress because your brain stops scanning the room for unsolved problems. You see the bowl, you know the mess is contained, and you know there's a time when it gets handled. That is psychological comfort, not just cleanliness. Now combine these two systems, cue-based rhythm and one-bowl containment, and suddenly the entire no-electricity lifestyle becomes calmer rather than chaotic. Your warm core room becomes the operations center. Your cooking becomes predictable. Your preservation becomes disciplined. Your drying becomes a cycle. Your lighting becomes safe and steady. Your day becomes a sequence of blocks instead of a constant scramble. And at that point, you realize the real message of the video. Monasteries didn't replace gadgets with old tools. They replaced gadgets with a more intelligent relationship to energy, attention, and sequence. That's why their solutions still work. Not because they're ancient, because they're efficient. If you want to take this one step further, the next video could be about the monastery power outage protocol for one full day. Exactly what they do from morning to night to keep the body warm, the mind steady, the food safe, and the space fresh. So you can copy the whole flow as a single routine, not just isolated tricks.